Hello and welcome to another mid-year freakout tag. I am so excited to dive in. I love giving you guys the scoop on what my reading year has been so far, giving you guys some stats, kind of catching up with you guys. I love making these videos, kind of just like a check-in, and I would love to know down below what your favorite read of the year is so far and how your reading year is just going overall. I don't know exactly who this tag was originally made by, but I'll leave them linked down below. And then I am actually kind of going off of Books and Lala's tag that she did. She added a couple of questions and kind of just reformatted it a little bit, and I really liked that. So that's kind of the vibe that I'm going for this year. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I have my questions written down on my MacBook, so you may see me like looking down. So far today, as of today, this is meant to be like more in the middle of the year, and we're a little bit into July when I'm filming this. As of now, I've read 66 books, which is a lot. It definitely is like ahead of my goal of 110, but I do think like towards the end of the year, I will be reading less per month because usually like September to December is like really busy for me. So I'm 10 books ahead of my goal as of right now. So we'll see how it ends up by the end of the year. My goal is 110. So anyways, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into our next question about these 66 books. How is my reading going just in general? So I think it's going pretty well. I would say I've had a lot of wins. I'm happy with my rating so far. I have, just to kind of touch on it, I have 12 5 stars this year so far, which I think is really good. For the whole year last year, I had 25 stars. So I think that like the ratio, and last year I read 123 books and I only had 25 stars. So I think the ratio so far is pretty good. I'm excited about that. So 12 5 stars and 27 4 stars, and then 24 3 stars, 3 2 stars, and no 1 star. So my reading year is going good. I'm happy with the reads that I've had. A couple of my goals that I feel like I've been able to work on is reading more off my TBR, my physical TBR, this monstrosity of bookshelves behind me, and then reading more books that I've been gifted by people, like prioritizing those, and I've done both of those things. As far as like books that I've read from my backlog, I've read 15 books that were on my physical TBR when I started the year. So I think that's actually really good. Oh, sorry. From my physical backlog, I've read 10 books off of my shelves that were on my shelves at the start of the year. But the entirety of last year, I only read 15 off of my backlog. So I think that's good progress. It's good. I'm trying to prioritize. The other thing is, let's see, also been trying to work on series that I've had like on my TBR for a while. So I started the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson, which was a big one on my list for this year. I read the first one. It was absolutely amazing. One of my 5 stars for this year, which I'll probably go through all my 5 stars later. Alrighty, to get us going along, we start out with a heavy hitter. What's the best book I've read so far this year? That is, hard because I do have like a top 10 of the year so far. It's kind of like a rolling top 10, just like as we progress throughout the year, what my favorites are. So my top 3 in reverse order, so from 3 to 1, I have, drum roll, I have at number 3, the last book in the Realm of the Elderlings universe by Robin Hobb, Assassin's Fate. This series, I've talked about it a bit on my channel, but it's just like such an epic build up to this last book. And those like when you read those books where you can like remember exactly where you were at when you finished them, how you felt, what the environment was like. Like I was in California when I finished this book, and it was just like out of this world, so like gut-wrenching, but also like so well done. This is like essentially a quick summary. It's a fantasy series. It's like a series that falls within a universe by Robin Hobb, where she has written a couple different, I think there's the Fits and the Fool kind of like main storyline, which has like 3 different little sub-series that all run together. And then you have the Rainbow Chronicles, which is more of like the dragon-esque kind of vibe. And then you have the Live Ship Traders, which is like pirates. And then they all have little connections together, which I don't want to spoil anything. Again, all this, by the way, is no spoilers. Like I'm not gonna reveal anything about any of the books that I'm talking about. I try to be careful about that and like throw up a warning if I am gonna do spoilers. But this is a big commitment. I think in total it's like 12 books. I'll put on the screen like the little graphic that I used to follow. My friend recommended it to me. And it's just like the payoff is absolutely crazy. Like so good. So that last book is probably gonna stay in my top 5 if I had to guess for the whole year. It has to, honestly. Basically you're following Fitz from child to like old age essentially, and he has these different powers where he can bond and like communicate through the mind with animals, and he also is like the bastard heir to this like big empire, so very much like chosen one kind of vibes. But there's just like so much else going on. There's so many amazing side characters. If you like epic fantasy and you like character driven fantasy, then you should definitely check this out. It's very heavy on like mental health and like internal struggles. Like you're in his mind, like deep in there, and it's just so good. But moving on, we have Children of Time, which was, there is a question on here that I'll get to later, but it's like a biggest surprise. This book was very surprising how much I enjoyed it. My number 2 book for the year so far, and it's a sci-fi. You're following the kind of like post-apocalyptic world where there's these scientists who have they went on this spaceship because Earth was like no longer inhabitable, and they are carrying, there's a kind of like mad scientist lady who's carrying this virus that they're going to implant in monkeys to like speed up evolution essentially. And they kind of mess up, well, they mess up, but it's kind of like a sabotage situation that you learn about. That's not a spoiler, it's like in the first chapter. And the virus lands on a different planet and infects spiders instead of the monkeys. And you're kind of like watching as they evolve over the span of like a long time, and what that does and what happens to the humans that are still on the spaceship, and as they try to find somewhere to inhabit, and like the communication between the spiders and the humans. It's kind of like a really grand story around empathy and like empathy for non-human things, if that makes sense. Couldn't recommend that enough. Was absolutely amazing. It really took me off guard how much I enjoyed it. And then number 1, it's gonna be hard to beat. Oh, let me show you some of these, by the way. None of you are probably surprised by this. Number 2, like I was talking about, Children of Time. This is the cover. These are the tabs. Then for number 1, we have this hefty boy, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. Read at the very beginning of the year, came out at the beginning of the year. There's my tabs. Absolutely incredible. Chef's kiss. I've talked about SJM enough to talk your ears off, probably. So I'm not gonna really, and it's hard to really touch on this without giving any spoilers, but this is the, I have a whole breakdown also on my TikTok. If you're not following me there, you should. I've been trying to make more stuff. But I have a whole breakdown on how I recommend reading Sarah J. Maas's work, and this is the series I recommend reading last. And this book, all I'll say is like, we've been waiting for the stuff that happened in this book. Like this is really like very satisfying. Can't wait for what she does next. But I know there was a lot of like kind of discourse around this one and her fan base, like whether or not, like some people didn't like it. I really loved it. Obviously it's my favorite book of the year, but yeah, 10 out of 10 would recommend, but don't start with this series. All right, moving on, because we're gonna be here literally all day if I don't hurry up and stop yapping. Best sequel I've read so far in 2023. This question's always hard to interpret for me. I'll do it kind of the way Books and Lala did it, where she wasn't necessarily talking about like direct, like number 2 in series. Like she just meant like a sequel, like not the first book of a series. Because I didn't really read any the only second book I've read is The Mystery Guest by Nina Prose, and I didn't really love this one, I'll be honest. This one came out this year. I've also read few 2024 releases, so that's a goal for my second half of the year, is to read more like new releases, which we'll talk about later because there's a couple I haven't gotten to yet. But so far, I would say Shadow Princess by Caroline Peckham is my favorite so far. This is the fourth book in the Zodiac Academy series, and it was super good. This series is kind of hit or miss for me. It kind of just depends on the book, and like the pacing can be a little bit off, but this one was like 10 out of 10 across the board. It's a series about a magical academy that has like Zodiac inspired elemental powers. And you're following these two twin sisters that have realized they're heirs to the throne and are having to like claw their way up to the top, kind of thing. And I like the powers. I think it's interesting, and the characters are interesting too. So my favorite reread of the year. So I have two answers because I can't pick one. We started rereading Twilight with one of my book clubs from work, and I've been having such a good time. We've read Twilight and New Moon so far. We're gonna do the whole series before the end of the year. So these are one of the series that got me into reading, and like I can just remember, I did actually right here actually. I just remember like pouring over them when I was in middle school, and like it was just like my whole life. So it's been like nice and nostalgic, like rereading it as an adult, and like it really holds up for me, I'm not gonna lie. But that's one of my favorites. And then I also reread the first two Crescent City books, because the House of Flame and Shadow is the third one in that series. I reread the first two in preparation for the third one so that it can be like fresh on my mind, because there's a lot to remember. So that is also on my list of favorite rereads for the year. Genres that I have been loving or reading the most. I'll go ahead and flash up my stats for genre so far this year. But definitely always my most read genre is fantasy. I feel like that's always gonna be the case because it's like what I'm most interested in. I've read 22 fantasy books so far this year. Surprisingly, I've read not a lot compared to like the 22 fantasy, but I've read 6 historical fiction books this year. Some of those are for our book club, but I was surprised by that. And I've also read 6 nonfiction. And then one other genre I've been loving lately, I never thought I would be this girl, but I've read 6 romance books this year. And some of them have been hitting. And it's not necessarily like, I don't love like just the pure like smutty romance, that makes sense, like the ones that lean on like erotica, and I don't mind that in books. I'm not like a prude or anything, like I don't care, and I do think it's, especially in SJM books. But anyways, what was I talking about? Anyways, romance, like I really like a good fun romance that has like a plot and like has good character development. And I've read a couple of those this year, so that has definitely been the most surprising for me. Moving on, new releases that I haven't read yet but want to. I have a lot, but what I'm gonna say so far, Finley Donovan Rolls the Dice is the newest Finley Donovan book that came out in March. I'll flash that up on the screen. I haven't read that one, and it's on my list to read. Middle of the Night by Riley Sager, I really want to get to soon. This one came out in June. Haven't read it yet, unfortunately. One of You by Erin Adams. She wrote Jackal, and I thought that one was interesting, so I've been wanting to get to that. That one came out in April. Oh no, it got moved to next year actually, just kidding, scratch that. Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware just came out in May, and I've been wanting to read that one. I haven't gotten to that one yet. So as you can see, there's a lot on my list, unfortunately, but I'm trying to work on that. That's one of my goals, like I said, for the second half of the year. All right, biggest surprise. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. Done and Dusted. You might have seen this cover, and at first glance, I will say I did judge a little bit. I can't help it. Okay, I was like, this seems like a weird like Western romance that I'm not gonna like. And it is a Western and it is a romance, but it also leans more to like contemporary. You're following Emmy, who she grew up in Wyoming and moved off. You don't really see this part, but like she moves off and is trying to like make a career for herself where she's doing like professional horseback riding, but she gets into an accident. Like, it's a very stereotypical horse girl book, but we've talked about this before. I'm a horse girl till I die. So this kind of like scratched that itch, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was so good. I really loved this one. I gave it 5 stars. It's like in my top 10 of the year so far. And I think it's just really cool. Like, she has 2 brothers, and you know, she goes back to her home ranch. She's kind of reconnecting with her family. And she actually has ADHD, and the author does as well. And there's like a really good like foreword explaining like the representation in the book and what that means for her. And I just think it was done really well. Everything, it was so cute. I really was bought into the romance. It was very sweet. It was a little bit steamy, and I don't know, it didn't have any of like the dumb like miscommunication trope. That's like my least favorite trope ever. It's kind of got a little bit of like, I'm still learning the romance tropes. It's got a little bit of insta love from his side. Oh, and it's brother's best friend trope too. So for my girlies that like that. So yeah, that's my biggest surprise. And then favorite new author, either debut or new to you. These are not debut, but these are new to me this year. So Etaf Rum, she wrote Evil Eye and A Woman Is No Man, which I both read this year, and they were both so good. I can't say enough good things about that, both of them. The Evil Eye is my number 5, so it should definitely in my top 5. We read that for the book club, and it's really good. I think I've talked about that on here. I might have done a reading vlog. It's very good. Would recommend her writing a lot. She does a really good job. It's definitely heavy. Both the books that I've read by her, Woman Is No Man is like even heavier than Evil Eye. But if you're wanting to read from the perspective of Middle Eastern women, specifically those who are trying to overcome like generational trauma and have immigrated to America from, I think both novels are Pakistani women that have moved to the US. So yeah, it's really good. Newest favorite character. Well, I spent some time talking about Fitz from Robin Hobb's series, and I would definitely say like he's way up there. I read most of the books with him in it though last year, so I don't know if that fully counts, but he's on there. And then I also have Kaladin from The Way of Kings. I love him. I think his like the empath that he is and like the way that he operates in The Way of Kings is like really relatable to me, and like the guilt that he feels and like just his character development I think was like really impactful for me, and so I think he's a really interesting and complex character, so he's on here for newest for me, and I can't wait to dive more into him and his story. No spoilers for Stormlight Archives. I keep thinking that the series is called The Way of Kings and that's just the first book. That made me cry. Honestly, several. Evil Eye made me cry for sure, and then Assassin's Fate like made me like I like sobbed on that book, the last one in the series. So my friend tried to warn me, and I was like in public at the gym. Book that made you happy. House of Flame and Shadow made me really happy. Anytime I get to read a new SJM book, and that's another one where I remember exactly where I was. I was on our Gatlinburg trip for my husband's birthday, and it was just like, oh, I couldn't wait to dive into it and like discuss with my friends. And yeah, it was really good. Done and Dusted made me happy, and that's why it's on the list. It just made me like feel like I was in the countryside riding horses. It made me happy. And then of course rereading Twilight also made me happy. All right, and what books do I need to read by the end of the year? All of those that I mentioned are on my TBR. There's a couple of books still coming out later this year that I really want to get to that haven't come out yet that I will definitely be reading. One of them is Heavenly Tyrant by Zeren J. Zhao, and that's the second book in the Iron Widow series that I definitely will be picking up. I want to continue to knock some off of my physical TBR, so I definitely am going to be reading the rest of the Stormlight Archives like I mentioned. If I have time, I might start Mistborn. I'm also going to be finishing the rest of the Zodiac Academy series. We definitely have a couple more to get to. And then I definitely want to read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Also a question on this list is what's the like prettiest book that you've gotten this year? Definitely this one. Also, this one is on my TBR too because it came out earlier this year and I really want to get to it. So look how pretty that is. It has the black sprayed edges. I really want to get to this one. And look at the inside. It's got like pomegranates. It's so pretty. I also have this one by Olivia Blake that I mentioned earlier, Masters of Death. This one's also really beautiful. I didn't purchase this one this year, but I definitely want to read this one before the end of the year. I also really want to read the Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This actually was really fun. Me and my husband Hunter went to the bookstore and he picked this one out for me based on just what he think I would like. And so I don't know, that's really special and I want to know like what it's about. He literally just read the book synopsis and was like, I think that she would like this and bought it for me. That's so sweet. But yeah, so that's the video for you. See you guys next time. Bye.